Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely pumped to guide you through today's explainer. Now, when most of us think about a biological cell, our minds probably go straight back to high school biology class, right? We picture this simple, kind of squishy, microscopic blob just floating aimlessly under a microscope. Well, the source material we're digging into today is going to completely shatter that assumption. It invites us to look at the cell not as a blob, but as a bustling, incredibly complex metropolis. We're going to unpack a really profound analysis here, taking us from the physical, heavy-duty machinery of this microscopic city all the way down to the digital-like code that actually runs the whole show. And we're going to break it down step by step. Okay, let's dive right into this. How is it even physically possible to fit so many distinct, absolutely crucial tasks into such an unbelievably tiny area? Our source material actually presents this as the ultimate paradox of biology. Because inside a single microscopic cell, you have thousands upon thousands of infrastructure parts. We are literally talking about an entire city's worth of systems, and they're functioning flawlessly in a space that you can't even see with the naked eye. It's a total engineering marvel that just completely defies our everyday understanding of space and complexity. So, Section 1, a city on a micro scale. To really wrap our heads around this, our source material shifts away from abstract, textbook biology and uses a very practical analogy. We need to start thinking of the cell as a highly coordinated factory, a place where thousands of simultaneous operations are happening all at once, and somehow without a single component ever interfering with somebody else's job. First up, you've got the mitochondria. These are your heavy-duty power plants, constantly pumping out the raw energy needed to keep this entire city running. Meanwhile, right next door, the ribosomes are acting as your manufacturing assembly lines, just continuously synthesizing vital proteins at absolute breakneck speed. It is this bustling, non-stop hive of energy production and raw manufacturing. But holding it all together is the ultimate manager in the corner office, the DNA. While the mitochondria and ribosomes are out sweating on the busy factory floor, the DNA is safely tucked away, storing the master set of instructions for the entire production line. Everything is perfectly compartmentalized. Everything knows its exact role. Moving on to Section 2, smallness is not simplicity. Now, having just looked at that incredibly bustling factory floor, the source material asks us to pause for a second and rethink a major bias that pretty much all of us carry. As humans, we naturally tend to assume that if something is microscopic, it's got to be basic, right? Small equals simple. But the analysis we're exploring today challenges that assumption head-on. To really drive this point home, the text highlights this fascinating quote from a historical commentator who beautifully personifies the cell. They wrote, "I am a tiny thing, but I have enormous duties. If you have the knowledge and power to organize the whole body and all the veins, then you can claim to have made me." This is a classic teleological argument presented in our source. It impartially suggests that you just cannot separate the tiny cell from the vast complexity of the entire body. The argument they're making here is that the immense, highly organized capabilities housed inside this tiny space are so profoundly integrated with the rest of the organism that it points toward a grand, deliberate designer. Basically, smallness isn't a lack of complexity. It's actually a testament to highly concentrated, purposeful engineering. Which brings us to Section 3, a code of 3 billion letters. Let's move to this next concept and see how this all builds. Because we're now transitioning from the physical machinery of the cell, the power plants and the assembly lines, straight into the digital realm. Because behind every great factory, there has to be an instruction manual. The source material brings us directly into the nucleus to examine the raw data that makes all of this life possible. Just look at that number, 3 billion. The DNA library inside a single human cell contains roughly 3 billion letters. Take a second to just let the sheer scale of that wash over you. We are not talking about some random jumble of chemicals here. The source is very, very clear on this. This is a library. These 3 billion letters form a highly specific, perfectly readable, and entirely functional sequence. It is a literal code, precisely arranged to dictate every single process we just talked about on the factory floor. So the crucial point is, how do we interpret a code of that magnitude? Well, to do this, the source material introduces a concept called information theory. This is the idea demonstrating that highly organized, functional, and readable information simply does not emerge spontaneously out of sheer randomness. You don't get a brilliantly written 3 billion letter instruction manual by just throwing Scrabble tiles at a wall. The source applies this established framework straight to biology, drawing the conclusion that because DNA contains such vast, functional, and deeply organized information, it logically implies the existence of a deliberate author. It is an incredibly powerful analytical lens through which to view the very building blocks of life. Which leaves us with this final, truly profound question pulled directly from the text. In a space so impossibly small, we have found an entire city's worth of machinery, and it's all run by an instruction manual that is 3 billion letters long. If highly organized functional information requires an author, who wrote this information? It is the ultimate mystery of biological complexity, wonderfully summarized by our source material today. I really hope this explainer gave you a brand new appreciation for the silent, staggering tasks happening inside your cells right at this very moment. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.